when your new 30-inch Schacht-Reeves arrives in the mail, it can feel a little bit overwhelming because you have two giant boxes. So unpack the boxes. One box will have the drive wheel in it. The other box will have everything else. Make sure that before you throw any packaging away, you have all of these things. The flyer should come with one whirl already attached and 2 more bobbins. You'll also have a lazy Kate, which isn't in this picture. These 2 little wood screws will be attached to the legs of the drive wheel, the uprights. You'll also have these 2 little pins, which may be in the Footman or maybe somewhere else. Just make sure you have them. A drive band, which you'll have to tie, your orifice hook, and the mother of all with this wood screw and this screw here. This won't be attached. This usually won't be attached. So let's put the mother of all in first. You want to remove these 2 screws. Make sure that there's a little indentation here that's going to sit up against that mother of all and hold it in place. And now I have this long screw. This goes in the end here. Line it up and just kind of turn it until it gets to the other end. Now we're going to be adding a drive band. So usually I make this so that the mother of all is sitting as far forward in this slot as it can go, because later we're going to have to adjust the tension. I was feeling like this was too hard to turn. It shouldn't feel hard to turn at all. What happened was this groove came out of place, which made this part under here too short, and so it was making it hard to turn. So just make sure everything's seated correctly. It should be really easy to turn. If it's not easy, don't force it at all. So notice if I continue now that it's all the way in, if I turn this, the mother of all is going to start moving forward toward me or back toward where the wheel will sit. To hold this in place, we have this nice little wood screw underneath. It goes on this threaded part. Just take your time and make sure everything's lined up. Again, this should move really easily. There should be no forcing it at all. Also, you don't have to tighten this too terribly tight. All you want to do is hold this in place. So there's no reason to kind of like squeeze it with all of your might, because you want these wooden threads to last a long time, and we don't want to put too much stress on them if we don't have to. So let's look at how I put on the drive wheel. So here's the drive wheel. You want to make sure that the crank is on the same side as the Footman. If you put it this way, you don't have anything to turn the wheel. So make sure the crank's on the side of the Footman. Just put these down into the holes that are already drilled. That's awesome. We're not going to worry about anything else at this point. So we have these 2, again, we have these little wood screws. I'm going to put them underneath. At this point, I'm not going to tighten them too tightly because we're going to do some adjusting in a minute, and we don't want to have to loosen them at this point. Keep them loose. And I did what I always do when I put these wheels together, every single time. I'm glad I did it. I forgot to put the drive band on. My drive band right now is already tied. Yours will come and it won't be tied, and so this isn't as worrisome for you if you put the drive wheel on and then you put the flyer in place. You're gonna put your drive band on and tie it But if you ever have to take it apart and you have your drive band tied already, make sure before you put your drive band on, or before you put your drive wheel on, that you put your drive band in place. That's better. If you need to know how to tie a drive band, on the Schacht YouTube video, there's another video that you can watch about how to tie the drive band. It's pretty simple. So now we want to put the Footman in place. This one, usually I work on the other side when I don't need to be facing a camera. This one, this is the shorter treadle, and this one has like a little cutout. That's going to go closest to the wheel. This treadle has this kind of funny little shape here. That's going to go at the spot that's furthest from the wheel, and that has this big hole and a slot, and you just slide it down and put it in place. And then we have these two nice pins that just slide in there. I'm going to try the other pin there. Just a bad angle. There's this very convenient hole that's always drilled in these wheels next to the uprights, and that's where you put your orifice hook. So now I'm going to put my flyer on. I'm not going to forget to put the drive band in place. I'm just not going to worry about which ridge I'm putting it in at this time. This part, this little tiny nose here, goes in that metal part, and then this is going to go in the leather. And this turns. So that's the way I'm going to remove and put on my flyer every time. I like to turn this a little bit. It's easy to take this out. You don't have to bend the leather then to get it out of shape. I'm just going to turn it. Make sure you don't turn it too far in, because that's going to make the flyer not want to turn. See how it doesn't want to turn? Adjust it so everything is kind of loose, and see, now I know that that's correct. I'm going to take one of the drive bands there, put the other drive band on the bobbin whirl. I actually like it in the smaller one of these, because we're already all the way forward here, and I need this drive band to be slightly looser. I like a lot less tension, especially on this wheel. It's really nice to have a lower tension so that everything's not getting pulled out of your hand. Now we're going to look at the wheel and make sure that everything's aligned correctly, because if your drive wheel is twisted to one side or the other, the drive band will come off. So if you're spinning along and your drive band keeps falling off all the time, it's usually because your drive wheel isn't in alignment with your flyer whirls. So I'm just going to stand on one side, and I didn't tighten anything underneath, and I'm going to hold the two uprights. I like to use one eyeball because my two eyeballs don't usually work. And make sure that everything's kind of centered. And now when I turn this, everything turns smoothly and nothing flies off. That's awesome. At this point, after everyth's aligned and I'm happy with it, then I'm going to turn these knobs down here. Again, because it's wooden threads, I'm not going to tighten them too tight. I should be able to loosen them really easily with just a couple of my fingers, but putting them just finger tight. And then check again, make sure that I didn't move everything when I was tightening. Everything looks good, everything's staying in place. So let's talk about adjusting tension and everything once you start to spin. In the box with your Schacht-Reeves, your drive band will look like this, and it's wrapped around with your brake band that you would use if you want to use this wheel in Scotch tension. So just unwind the Scotch tension string. On this side of the mother of all, there's this little key that looks like an adjuster to a violin. It has a hole right here. So all you want to do is put this little string through the hole. You can tie it around. I like to tie 2 knots so that it won't come out of the hole. So it makes a pretty nice size knot there. I know that's not going to come through. Put this back in the little place where it belongs. And I'm going to wrap this brake band around there several times. Now when you adjust it, of course, you're going to turn this little knob. I just like to wrap it at first because I'm not going to put it on right now. It should come under this other little knob and then over the mother of all. This is just for storage purposes. And the spring is going to sit on this hook. Now if you want to use it, you would move the drive band over to the flyer whirl and make this string long enough that it's going to go over the bobbin whirl. But for me, I just like to leave it in this place until I'm going to use it. Right now we're going to talk more about double drive. When your wheel comes, you'll see that there's already a little bit of yarn on one of the bobbins. That's because every single wheel is checked to make sure that it's working and running beautifully before it comes to you. So I'm just going to use that as a leader, pull that thread off. I haven't spun on this wheel yet, so I'm not sure if this is adjusted enough. There's a ton of play in here, but I'm not going to worry about that at this point because I usually like a very low take-up. I can see that the difference between the flyer whirl and the bobbin whirl is a pretty big size difference, which no matter how loose this is going to give you more take-up than if the sizes are closer in diameter. So I'm not going to adjust this at all until I see how much take-up I have. Now when I start to treadle, I can hear that there's a lot of slippage happening. The flyer's not going around as fast as I would think it should. And there's almost no take-up. I kind of have to will this yarn onto the bobbin with my brain. So I'm going to make a little tiny adjustment. To do that, I'm going to go under here, loosen this up. You're going to do this a lot. That's why I don't like to tighten this. That's another reason I don't like to tighten this too much, because when you're making adjustments, it should be easy to open and close this. I'm not going to unlock this a lot, just enough so that everything will be able to move. When I make this adjustment, I'm just going to turn this knob. That was maybe a quarter of a turn at the most. And you can see that that made a big difference in how much tension there is on that drive band. Since I was already getting some take-up, I don't want to make adjustments that are too big at a time. We're going to make little tiny adjustments. This is much better. I can feel it. Already much better. And see how much faster the flyer's turning this time. That's because the drive band is tight enough that it can move everything. It has enough friction there to move everything, but it's not so tight that I don't get the slippage that I need when I want the yarn. Notice when I stop and start, it takes the flyer a little bit of time to get up to speed. That's because I have very little tension on this flyer, but that's what I want. You should be able to pull the yarn off and let it go back on easily while everything is turning. If you're having a hard time or your yarn breaks when you're trying to pull it off the bobbin, then you have too much tension. And notice how fine I'm spinning, and this yarn is standing up to me, pulling it off and on. Less tension on your drive band means less tension on your whole wheel, which means that your wheel is going to last a longer time, which we want when we're having a wheel that is so well made as this one. Also, lower tension means that your treadling is going to be easier. You're not going to have to think about it. You're not going to be really pushing and feeling like you're slogging through. Less tension also means less tension on your hands, so you're going to be able to keep your hands open. And if you're doing a short forward draw, these fingers shouldn't have to be pinching really hard. If you have lower tension where the yarn isn't being pulled out of your hand, then this is really loose. Notice I can even stick my fingernail between my fingers and the twist is not coming up into the fiber supply. My backhand is open and just sort of like cradling my fiber rather than gripping it. If your tension's too high, you feel like you have to close up all your hands. So the way I like to think about it is this. If you're walking down the street and somebody runs by and grabs your bag, what do? You go like this, right? You want to hold on to it. You get tense and tight. That's what happens when you have too much tension on your wheel. If you're walking down the street and you see someone that needs help, what do? You open your bag, you hand them something. It's more like a gift. Everything is kind of more comfortable. You feel happy. That's what we want. That's why we're spinning, is to feel happy. I'm not saying you have to spin with as light of tension as I do, but try to reduce your tension as much as you can. Start with almost no take up and just increase little by little until you get a tension that's going to take the yarn when you give it, not take the yarn when the wheel wants it.
If you liked this video and would like more content like it, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.